welcome to Let's Talk Real Estate Stuff podcast, where we dive deep into the world of real estate investing and the random stuff that makes life interesting. I'm joined by my co-hosts, Brandon, aka Papa P from Ted Sysops, and Carlos Samar from Investor Views, and Carrot. And we have a guest on today. And I'm going to hand the mic over to Papa P to introduce our guests here and some of the fun that you're in for if you're watching this.
A timely introduction for Papa P,
I
perhaps.
just feel like you sprung that on me. We are here with Andy from
welcome.
Property Leads. We're having him on today because he runs one of, in my opinion, and we know I have strong opinions about PPL, one of the better, more ethical, from my heavy testing, unbeknownst to him, PPL providers. Everyone knows I've tried many different PPL providers, thrown a lot of money at each one, some not as much as others, and tested out their leads, verified whether I thought they were selling them to other people, how old I thought the leads were, what I thought generally, and I found that Property Leads was pretty straight up, and I currently use them, and I am happy with their services, and Carlos happened to know the man himself, and so we're here today with Andy. Welcome to our show.
What's up, man? Good to be here. Thank you for testing us out, giving us a little ghost test in the background. I appreciate that.
Yeah, dude. You just never know nowadays. Like, there are some skeptical providers out there, to say the least.
They are. Andy, can you give us a little background on who you are and maybe why you started a PPL company? I mean, it's definitely become a buzzword around the real estate investing world. We've talked about it a few times here on this podcast, and are continuing to talk about it. And Carlos is encountering many situations with the people he gives demos to for Carrot and Investor Views, asking about PPL, who we would recommend and all that fun stuff. So yeah,
happy customers, even maybe more so.
That's true.
Good.
Yeah,
awesome to hear. So at a high level, I graduated in software engineering from Virginia Tech back in 2018. Worked for the Navy for 3 years as a software engineer, as a civilian. Wasn't super enthralled by the W-2 life, and wanted to get into the real estate space. Started buying rented properties, started trying to get into wholesaling, doing cold calling, stuff like that. Eventually found the rabbit hole of SEO and PPC. Fell really down the rabbit hole of SEO. Our first site was doing 60 leads a month. Then we did the next site. Eventually, we're doing a couple thousand SEO leads a month, and then we kind of started to roll that into a pay-per-lead company. Before that, it was like a lot of rev shares and JV partnerships, which were always chaotic at best and scary at worst. And so, the reason why we got into pay-per-lead today is because we love marketing. We love working in the real estate space, especially the real estate investor space. But it's also a really good confluence of our software background and then also the marketing background. In my opinion, a way to make a really, really strong PPL company is to have a ton of software in the back end that is running most of the team. And so we have very few employees. We do about 1.5 million revenue per head right now, which I think is really good. And so
very good
compared to other companies, which are typically 50 or 60 people. And there's just a lot of people pushing buttons kind of thing. So that's our goal. And we believe we continue to scale that. We can have a really streamlined process. And really what ends up happening is we end up passing the lead quality on the system. Because at some point, like, you're either having really high lead quality or really cheap lead. And so if we're trying to do both at the same time, we got to be really, really streamlined on the back end. So
love it. Rando question. Do you still write code?
I stopped about a year ago. I'm still involved in all the software calls and stuff. I like software a lot. Everything we do is written in Python. We use Lambda and Pipedream as our two dev stacks to kind of tie everything together.
Nice.
Use a little bit of Node.js and stuff like that too. But I try to stay out of GitHub at this point. Probably cause more problems than good.
Yeah,
love it. Very cool. All right. So what is PPL? If somebody's tuning into this and like, I know who Andy is, but what the hell is PPL and why would I choose it? What would you say, Carlos? Give us your kind of high level view, what you feel like PPL is, and then we'll see if Andy agrees with how you phrase it.
Yeah, I mean, its simple acronym is pay per lead. It's what you're getting into. So instead of managing your own or outsourcing management of, let's say, a Google pay-per-click campaign, you're essentially saying, and each provider, maybe this is something that we'll get into and have talked about in the past, each provider seems to do a little bit different setup with how they're providing on a per lead basis. But that's essentially what it is to me. And what I've seen on the show is I'm of the mindset of most real estate investors shouldn't be as focused on marketing as they are on acquisitions and dispositions and essentially like direct revenue generating activities. So I always have a lens of leaning towards, hey, how can I outsource this? Or how can I get someone to help me in my marketing efforts? Just get me and my leads team. We'll make money with the leads that you provide. So in the simple form, it's you're paying on a per lead basis versus running a marketing campaign yourself or paying someone to run a marketing campaign for you.
Nice. Do you agree with that, Andy? Anything you'd
Yeah,
add to the elevator pitch?
No, I 100%. I think you nailed it. Nothing really to add on that one.
Cool, love it. Good job, Carlos.
I just feel I feel as if like I want to preface. I want to kind of reiterate some stuff for
Here we go.
rebuttal, I guess. Looking for the right word choice there. Yeah, I agree with you. There is something to be said. Now, obviously, I use PPL, and it's like I've been through the cycles of all the different lead channels in my years. But it's like one of the things too is it really depends on your plans and your business path that you're going for PPL, because you do never want to be beholden to somebody. Because if Andy, I don't know your business, I don't know your hierarchy, but if he drops dead today, your entire lead flow may go, and that's something a lot of people don't think of. And I actually did have that exact scenario happen to me. And you don't think about it until it actually happens. So like learning to market or having somebody on your team that is good at marketing, if you're the sales guy, having your own marketing channels in conjunction with PPL, personally, I believe is the best scenario. Using PPL as one of the avenues, having your own branding, your own marketing channels is obviously going to be something you want to do or need to do if you're going to scale as well. Like if your goal is to have a big team, you're going to need, in my opinion, more than just PPL. And it would behoove you to establish your brand in your marketplace as well. But yeah, Carlos, I get where you're coming from. It's like, but if you're just a solo guy, like just knocking out some PPL leads and that's all you need to do and you focus on sales, there ain't nothing wrong with that. There ain't nothing wrong with that at all.
Go ahead, Andy.
Yeah, PPL is interesting, right? Because you've got it's in real estate. You've got three sections to the business. You've got the marketing side. You have the acquisition side, which is like the marketing side. You have the disposition side, which is partially the getting under contract, and also the sales side. Then you have the side of just running the business and stuff. And so from the get go, like when you're first getting started, if you can remove one of those three sections, it makes running a business so much easier because it's hard to do three things at once. What we found though is that generally once you lock in your return on ad spend, you know what you can spend to get a lead. I mean, lead quality for us doesn't really fluctuate. We keep it pretty static, and so if you lock in at a 4, let's say, and then you expand your team and you're down to a 3, and you're happy with a 3 ROAS, then like you just keep spending whatever, and you can add in other marketing channels. You can go become a master direct mailer and stuff like that. At the end of the day, we're doing it all too, so it's like we're gonna it all just ends up kind of to the same place. And so from that perspective, like I'd encourage you to split test PPL companies. I'd encourage you to do your own marketing stuff too. But when you're first getting started, I would definitely not recommend doing your own marketing to really go lose a ton of money.
I'm with you on that, because when you're starting out, and that kind of leads into something. When you're starting out, focus is important. Obviously, doing multiple channels, like you really need to master one at a time. And too many people come in and they try to do 3 or 4 things all at once, and they totally biff it. And because they can't do that, there are either 1 or 2 people on a team or some VAs, and you can't pay attention to that. But let's just say you are a new person, right? And you're going to focus on you're going to focus on PPL. What do you think is, and let me say this, I'm coming into this business and I have limited cash, but I'm a good sales guy. I feel like I'm a good sales guy. That's who I am. What do you think would be a good budget for me on your leads? And let's just average it out, because I know with your stuff, it could be different pricing. You're in Dallas, you're in Michigan, all different. But let's just say in general, on average, how much do you think I need as a new provider? You're my only lead source, but I'm a decent sales guy, and I got a CRM.
Yeah, we typically wouldn't onboard anybody unless they can afford to buy at least 30 leads over a 3 or 4 month period of time. Our thinking there is that that gives you, it's not enough statistical significance to really show what your return on ad spend will be, but it's enough statistical significance to be able to get a deal in some form and to start the process of seeing return on ad spend and stuff. And so, the other thing there too is that we can typically see if someone has actually a good salesperson or not based on how many leads they're refunding for no response and stuff like that, like what their follow-up process is, et cetera. So it does vary. I mean, if you're in a 125 county, 30 leads, that's what, $3,500. If you're going national, that's $1,500. If you're going in Dallas, it might be, closer to $8,000 to $9,000. So it could definitely vary depending on the market.
I want to get to Carlos's question here. Hold on, but I want to just pinpoint something that Andy, you said there, and I think this is what like most people don't think about. A lot of wholesalers, especially when they're starting out, are like in month windows. What can I do this month? What can I do that next month? What can I do the month after that? You said you want somebody walking in with the expectation of multiple months, this ad spend going over multiple months to see returns. And I think this is something that most people don't understand. Why are you saying multiple months in that perspective?
Well, at a high level, when you're first getting started, I wouldn't recommend doing more than a few leads per day. Day one, it seems 100%. Really easy. But by day 5, you have the first 12 leads you're still working on. Then you have the next 3 leads you got to work on today. And they stack, just like you said. And so, especially when you're beginning out, I mean, I wouldn't recommend anything more than that. Even the top sales team, from the top sales teams that I see, their top sale guys won't take more than 4 leads per day. On weekdays only, 0 leads on the weekends. So it's 20 leads a week.
Well, that's probably them using Investorfuse, with like a good follow-up sequence.
Yeah, just like that. It's tough. I mean, if someone they came in from like car sales, for example, and they're used to getting into the nitty-gritty and they have a lot of experience and they have the cash to back it up, like I'm not going to tell them how to run their business, but I generally like to see that they have a commitment of at least 30 leads, a total like 30 net leads after refunds and stuff to be able to really give it a real attempt. People come in and they're like, I'm going to buy a couple leads. I'm going to give it a shot. I'm cool. Go sign up somewhere else. Like I don't need to work with you. I'm fine. Thank you.
What about the sales cycle though? Like I mean,
that's what I was about to get into is like if you're doing a couple leads a day and you're talking, hey, I need 30 leads. I mean, that pretty much, let's just assume you're doing it every day. You're pretty much tapped out within a few weeks of that. So let's just say a month. Let's say somehow you string it along because you're not working weekends. You do it for a month. Now, where I got into it, I kind of ran into this because when I was testing things out, I was putting money in different accounts. And it's like you put money in and, you're doing the automatic billing and you set this budget. Well, I got some deals from your stuff. Phenomenal, right? Got some deals and I'm like, okay. But writing like some of the ones and they were good deals, but they, I had title issues. I had one was trying to avoid foreclosure. I had to negotiate liens, like personal liens with like the lien holders. They had filed and that took time for me to close it. So some of those, maybe I got them in November and then by the time they were closing, it was February. So cash conversion cycle was long on some of those. So you thinking 30 leads to get how many contracts do you think over that time frame? Just for one, you think like for a new person, they should account for 1 or 2 of those, 2 contracts in that 30?
And I hate talking about leads to contracts just because it's so based on their sales process and stuff. Like we can only guarantee how many leads that come into the system actually transfer title. Like that's all I can guarantee. And I think we have a really good rate. We shoot for 50% in 6 months, 33% in 3 months. The second it gets into leads per contract, that's entirely based on that person's sales process, their disposition process, what buyers they have, what leads can they actually convert into deals. Do they know how to negotiate personal liens? Do they know how to negotiate an IRS tax lien, et cetera?
Yeah, luckily I
can't do that for you.
No. But, well, to answer Carlos's question below, other Carlos A, not Carlos Z, would you think then that somebody with no sales experience would be a brand new wholesaler should throw some money at PPL? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, we've had this conversation a lot, and I think RJ Bates is a really good example of this. Like, he would never recommend someone do some cold calling off the rip. He would recommend someone go buy some PPL leads. Get them from a cheaper place. Don't go spending $300 or $400 on a lead. Try to bid low. Maybe go wider geographies. You can get lower prices and stuff. But use that to test your sales process and stuff. And we see a lot of people do that at the national level. Maybe they start national because they just want to get used to kind of pitching the product effectively. and they get used to dispoing and stuff like that. And then eventually they want to localize down to their local backyard and stuff to increase that velocity and stuff. But we've seen that work really, really well for people because at $50 a lead, for example, even if you have to blow through 100 leads to get there, like you're still gonna be able to make money eventually, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's important. I mean, we're all here know what we're talking about, but I'm gonna just like dumb it down a little bit for the average person out there that maybe this is their first podcast that they're ever looking about for PPL. So when you're talking like cold calling, cold texting, and then even a little into direct mail, you're getting a lot of potentially a lot of lead response, but not many motivated leads, meaning like they're starting the process of thinking about selling the house.
I'm sorry,
then,
I just laughed because I got one after 3 years, a cold call lead. I was telling John it took me 3 years
that's right.
for them to say yes. I just got it signed on
there
Monday.
You go. See,
so
they're just beginning that process.
Yeah,
and I mean they are good. That's a good thing to go through to like figure out how to talk to sellers, but motivation is a problem. So what you get with PPL leads are motivated leads that are actively out there searching for terms on the internet to sell their house fast or quick or without the MLS, whatever amazing keywords that Andy and his team have optimized for. And so you get people that when you get on the phone for them potentially the first time, they're ready to say yes. They're ready to look for a solution to the problem that they're currently experiencing versus a cold call lead. They might start to have the issues, but they're maybe not ready for 6 months or 3 years. So, but I think it's interesting. Like, I think that's an interesting concept because here on this podcast, we've told people, if you're a new person, you don't have sales experience, PPL is probably not the best thing for you. But that's going from the perspective of Brandon's experience going in and tailoring it down to the markets that he's used to and talking to. But so on your platform, Andy, is there a good way for somebody to come in and get cheaper leads than the typical price point that people are saying out there, $200, $300, $400 per lead, so that they can get that experience?
For sure. At the RIB, you can bid whatever you want, effectively starting at like 125. But we have a ton of people who start nationally where it's $50 a lead. There's a ton of volume. You get to really get your sales experience in trying to talk to sellers, and you see the motivation. Typically, I find that they're actually more motivated because they're in a more rural area. There's less options, that kind of stuff. And I've seen that work really, really well for a lot of people.
And I mean, those people are more likely to pick up the phone too than if you have a cold call list of 5,000 people that you're going through. Like, these are people who are going to talk to you.
For sure. And I'm just specifically against cold calling too. I think it's
that's fair.
Such a very, very difficult use of time.
I love it is, but it makes a person, and I come from a different age. So like this was back before current laws and all kinds of stuff. But like I think cold calling, you make your bones cold calling. It's just like door knocking. But I agree with you with an option like PPL. If I could get $50 leads and they were coming in consistently, I mean, yeah, you avoid the burnout. There's a power in saying, "How may I help you?" versus, "Hi, this is so and so. Have you ever thought about selling your house?"
1,000,000%.
There's a big difference.
1,000,000%.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
stress levels are very different too.
When we were talking earlier about like pay per lead definition, Brandon also comes from a background of like building out cold calling teams and has been very successful for that. So that's why it's like, which I get that perspective too.
That was my source.
Of like, of like, it's good to have that in house and you're, getting your own groceries, making your own food versus like relying on an Uber Eats driver to bring you. Might be the exact quality of what you want, the exact meal, fits your macros, everything like that. But I see both ends of that. I didn't really think about a beginner being able to start off with such a low budget, $50.
I didn't either until he just said that. Like I did not. So without you saying that, I would have been like, "Nah, dude, you got to cold call you," because I have been on the other end of like, "Oh man, like I've been on vacation or I'm coming back. I haven't dialed in a while, and you come in, your first call, horrible. Like your first, like that first time back, like you get the yips out, and then you get back into your rhythm. I couldn't imagine doing that." Practicing on $300 PPL leads as a new person, but at $50 a lead, a lot of people think cold calling's cheaper. Yeah. A lot of people think cold calling is cheaper, but when you add in the data the skip tracing, the data management software if you're using something like that, the time to
Yeah.
call them. Let's not forget about the phone numbers and the minutes. Like, people don't take that. So when I talk to people about cold calling, they're like, "Oh, it's so cheap." I'm like,
Is it?
There's
Well,
a lot of
that's
stuff that goes into it, like scrubbing it for litigators. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it. So
Cecil,
anyway,
my dude.
but
that's the initial. What's up, Cecil? He's my guy. That's really the main benefit, or one of the only pros I see with outbound leads is how cheap the initial investment to get into them. However, there's also a back end net cost of those, your team, longer follow up time, everything like that. So any conversation in life, I would, as many as possible, sales, whatever, I would much rather them be inbound conversations. It's a lot less mental wear and tear, better quality, everything like that. Completely different conversation, as Brandon said.
So Andy, I hope I don't mess up your stats here for my man Cecil. So I was trying to look. I saw your question come up, and I was trying to like pull it up, and I was trying to. I don't know if you saw me, but my eyes. I was trying to like manually count and figure this out without having to like go into my CRM real quick. So it looks like we're at about 1 out of 12 is what it looks like. But I will say I am still like Andy led up to it.
Contract.
That's not. Yeah, no, per close. My
Okay.
contract is 1 to 8. It looks like. So, but we didn't close every one of those. Is it?
And what's your target? Just so everybody listening has an idea.
What's my target? What do you
like
mean
how
target?
far is it? All of Florida, a certain county?
No, I'm in multiple. So like Andy's system is pretty cool. You can pick, and he gives you free reign to pick wherever you want to pick. So I'm in Texas and Florida, multiple markets around Dallas, Houston, Orlando, Tampa. All the different, and he does it by counties, not by markets. So like I'm in all of those. But I'm also still working a lot of those and following up. And like I have, obviously, like some of them were still pretty far out in the cycle. Not like a lot of the ones that are just like the guy I talked to today is like, yeah, okay, let's just do this. And you get those versus other ones. They're like, okay, like I still got to go through probate, or, hey, I got to do this. It's going to take some time still. So those numbers will get better, I think, but I still think they're pretty decent compared to where I was for cold calling. We were working
100%.
like 1 out of every like 70 or 65, 70. Yeah, it was crazy.
Brandon's also being slightly modest right now. Right before we went live, he got a lead that verbally agreed to a deal right before we went live. So that was pretty cool.
First call,
not,
right? First call.
Yeah, but it's not signed, bro. It's not signed. That doesn't mean. And
There's
whenever
still some
anybody
proof to
says,
happen.
I just want to say, whenever somebody says yes to me on my first call, I always think I left money on the table. It's just who I am. But anyway. But I mean, Andy, I know you don't want to get into like ratios and stuff, but do you feel I was being fair with my numbers compared to some of your other users, or do you feel like maybe I'm way off on that? Yeah.
No, I think that's fair. And were you looking at that post refund or pre refund or?
I believe that's without refunds, because I was just kind of pulling up your system and counting all the leads and then going through so I think your refunds are still, so that's probably without refunds accounted.
Okay.
And I've had a pretty good, and you're pretty good at refunds. I have a 2% decline rate, it looks like.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that's, I think it's the stuff that we typically see. But it's tricky though, because we see huge variations, right? I mean, we have people who are truly closing 1 and 3 to 1 and 4, but they're like the one guy in their county. They hard money lend. They're a real estate agent. They're a broker. They own huge investment firm. Like they do everything under the sun, right? And then we have people who are closing 1 to 30. They go national, but they're happy because their lead cost is, or their cost per close is $1,500. So there's huge variety. But for the average guy in the average market, I think that's pretty on par.
Do you have a way on your team? Like, I agree with you, and I think it's interesting. Everybody, when they think of PPL, they just think it's going to work, versus like, no, there's like some strategy involved with this. And is there in property leads somebody they can talk to that can like guide them through those kind of strategy decisions that they might do for what they're budgeting for, or where they're getting leads, how they're getting leads?
For sure. When you onboard, if you can either self onboard or you can set up a phone call, but the person you set that phone call with they're with you for life, and they'll know what to do, and you can reach out to them. And the general thing we say to everybody is that it's not a hard guarantee in this way, because it's kind of abstract to talk about. But if we look at the title transfer report for the leads that you've gotten, and we see that, we pitch 50% in 6 months. If we see it substantially below that, we're going to give you a credit, right? Because like our goal is not to sell leads that don't end up selling our own. Now, if like we find out that like, hey, it's actually not that far off, and it was your sales process, like that's a you problem, just transparent.
Right.
But if it's us, we're gonna own it, and we'll make it right in some form.
I'm gonna restate that in another way, and then we're gonna lead into refunds because I want to talk about that. But so I had to, not being a real estate guy, being a tech guy, I had to ask Carlos and Papa P. I was like, what did he mean by title transfer rates? I guessed right, just for the record. I did guess right. But so what that means basically is if you get 30 leads from property leads, your sales process, your ability to settle the seller's situations and make the sale is up to you. But so what Andy can do is he says, okay, these 30 leads that you got, I can see that title was transferred in a certain period of time after you got that lead, which means that they solved their problem with somebody. It may not have been you, but they solved their problem with somebody, which means it was indeed a good lead, which I really love the way that you look at that because, you're right. There's so many variables, factors that go into your ability to handle. Like Papa P's been around for ages. Like he can, I call him Papa P, but he can handle a lot of things versus somebody who's new coming in, doesn't have those, 15, 20 years of experience of handling liens and all that stuff. So I like the perspective that you guys have on that, and I'm totally with you that a lot of things are out of your control. Your what you can control is the quality of leads coming in, and you can judge that based on the title transfer. So there's that elementary explanation for those of you out there like me. Let's talk refunds. So why do you guys do refunds? What can you get refunds for? Like, what are refunds in the PPL industry? Because when you are doing your own PPC, nobody gives you a refund on your money. Why do you guys do it?
Yeah, it's funny. Pay-per-click is about as abstract as pay-per-lead, and I think our way to offset the abstract and to try to come across as more sincere is to offer that refund policy. So it's to avoid the situation where someone thinks we're just blowing through like FSBO leads or something like that, which we don't do. But this is a way to avoid that, right? So if someone comes in and they're like, oh, my house is listed in the MLS, or oh, my house this is a wholesaler, or I can't get in contact, or they're not actually selling their home, that kind of stuff, we'll refund it. To us, at bare bones levels, to us, a qualified lead is someone who has a home and they want to sell it. That's it. And if it doesn't fit in that box in some form, then we'll typically refund it.
You would end up only paying for the leads that essentially you can do something with. You should be able to do something with.
There's something to action on.
Yeah, you can communicate with them, and there's something for you to action on. What's your experience been like, Pop P, with Brandon?
I mean, I don't know if you denied my recent ones or not, but I don't think so because my decline rate went down. I'm pretty fair when I do it because, like, listen, there's times where I've effed up. Like, I'm pretty sure it was like the first lead I ever got, and I just biffed it. And I knew the guy sold to somebody else, and I just biffed it. And I was like, shit. But generally, the only one I got declined on was one which, it wasn't really my fault. I had a good follow-up. I manually do everything. Texted, called, emailed, bro, like on point, 4 days, 5 days. And I was still doing it even after I requested my refund. They declined it because they went out and they texted and the guy responded to him. I still haven't been able to get a hold of him. But again, like, am I complaining? Like, whatever, like, that's fine. Out of the other ones I've refunded, they've said yes to, and that's one of them. And it's like, yeah, I'll take that all day long. So you do have to be very fair with what you're submitting in. So, I mean, like, I've had people respond to me and say, yeah, I'll get on a call, and then nothing. But I don't send that in as a refund request because technically they responded to me, and their refund is like if they don't respond. So like if you send that in, that's not really fair to the PPL provider. So I am trying to like walk that line of like, yeah, I didn't get it, and I never really talked to them. They just responded to a text or email, and I got one word out of them, and that's that. But like, hey, that's the game we're in. But like, sure. I submitted 2 of them the other day. One was for no response, and like I think I did like 18 attempts over like 5 days, I think, because I was really trying. And then another one was just a lady's like, no. I'm like, well, maybe it was somebody else who filled out your form. She's like, not for sale. And like, so I send them, and I do like little loom videos, and I'll go through like my account, and I'll be like, here's my text, here's my emails, and I shoot them a loom, and they're pretty good at refunding. But again, like, it's only in those instances where it's, an obvious thing of I can't get a hold of somebody. after numerous attempts, or they just straight up, and I've had them say, I've had wholesalers, I'm pretty sure, agents, and not wholesalers, agents. I've had people just say no. I've had people claim they didn't fill out the form, and I've had no issues. So
For sure. Yeah, and to mention on the decline refund rate thing too, like if you have a decline refund rate of like 1, 2, 3%, like we're not going to take any action on that. But there are people who have 10, 15, 20% decline refund ratios, and what that means is that if they get 100 leads, they're getting declined on 25 total refunds. So it's not like that means they probably refunded 50 or 75 leads, but they're getting declined on 25. And when we decline a lead, like we know there's a leads we approved on a refund side that should not have been approved that we just missed on, because it's the natural process, right? And so our way to just kind of absolve that in real time is just to basically force them to pay a ton more to get leads, or to basically push them out of the system so they can stop getting leads. Because
they're shooting shit at the wall, basically. Yeah. They're just trying to see. Yeah, they're trying to see if you'll say yes, because they figure, what does it hurt? I didn't get this deal. Like, what does it hurt to see if I could get my refund? Do you feel like that's the attitude of like people just saying like, oh, well, I'll submit this in, see if I get a yes or no? Because there was no penalty for a no. But now you're starting to say like, hey, listen, if your decline rate goes up so high, there will be a penalty for you submitting leads that shouldn't be submitted for a refund. But you still want to refund us. You just want them to be, like I said, like, hey, I walk a line with legitimate refunds. Not my fault. Like
100%.
there was a lead where I just totally lost it in my pipeline. Didn't get a hold of them, and it was days, and I was like, oh, son of a. And I was like, I'm not going to submit this in. This was on me. Like this one slipped through the cracks, and that happens, right? But other people might have been like, oh, let me submit this in for a refund.
Yeah, and there's definitely some bad actors out there who are super throwing stuff at the wall, and then they complain that, oh, your leads suck, and then they go jump to the next company, and then they come back and they're like, why is my decline refund ratio so high? And I'm like, it's because you refunded $10,000 worth of leads that like were not legitimate refunds.
Well, that's the thing. A lot of people say, you're not you specifically, but I have heard people say property leads are bad. I've heard people say motivated leads are bad, and I've heard people talk shit on every single company. But the main argument, we know I talk shit on one company, just one company that's absolutely horrible. But I digress.
Not this one if you just joined.
No, it's everyone knows I'm not a fan of the marketplaces. I just feel the marketplaces are scams. They sell them to multiple people. It's just a waste of money. And I remember talking to the one guy. He's like, the worst thing I ever did was fill out that form. And I had done I'm pretty sure that's the one where I did the, like, so you pay extra to be the only person. And so, like, who gets that lead? And I'm like, what do you mean you filled out a lot of forms? He's like, no, I just filled out the one.
The seller you're talking about.
The seller, yeah. And he's like, just one. And I was like, and you just been getting called? He's like, my phone's been ringing nonstop. It's the worst thing I ever did was fill out that one form. And I was like, oh, I guess I wasn't the only buyer of that lead. But what do you say to people who say that they sell leads, or they're buying leads that they're not generating themselves from other high-end providers in general in your industry? So somebody may be going out and buying cold call leads, or somebody may be going out like buying. I actually had one that came from and I verified it. It came from like a mortgage company. They applied for like a mortgage type of thing, and we got a lead from that, like a refinance type of thing. And people are buying those leads. Like, is that a common thing in the industry? Do you feel like that's a bad thing or a good thing, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, if we look at the industry as a whole, like, and this is not us specifically, like everything I would say like 97 to 6% of what we do is generated in-house. So that's why I feel very confident about our lead quality, and how I know it's very static across the system. But for some of the other aggregators, they focus more on aggregation rather than actual generation. And so they'll focus more on buying leads and kind of making the margin between the generator and the actual person who's buying the lead. And the benefit to that from a business perspective is that it's super simple. You know your margin; it's very fixed. Like, you don't have to spend money you only have to spend money when you know you've made money, kind of thing. The flip side of that, though, is that you definitely lose control of your lead quality. And so if you've seen the examples before of companies where lead quality was really good one month and the next month it was like total poo-poo, that's potentially what's going on. And so we tend to stay away from that. That's why we try to do it in-house, or that's why we do it in-house. the other thing too that I've heard a lot of people say, and I think we talked about this before, but is my company that I'm working with, are they sending the lead multiple times and stuff? And there are companies that market that they're sending the lead multiple times, which is at least transparent. But on the exclusive side, at least for property leads and stuff, we sell it one time. It's very easy for us to show that we only sell it one time because we have a unique identifier that we get with every single lead. It's called a trusted form, or like a Jornaya token is another example. We have one for every single lead. If somehow there's 2 leads generated, like we're gonna have 2 unique ones, but even that's not very common. Versus other companies, I don't think some of the other companies are not as focused on that. I would say they're focused more on the how do we jam stuff through the system. They have more velocity requirements rather than quality requirements, if that makes sense. So something to consider there.
So, yeah, I mean, that is something, right? Where like, so it's a 2-part thing. Them buying the leads from somewhere else, because when I go to a company and I go to you, right, and you could do your one-on-one meetings or you onboard yourself or whatever, generally a lot of people should be asking, okay, well, how do you generate these leads? And so everyone says a lot of the same stuff. Well, we do Facebook or Google SEO, we'll do YouTube or TV, whatever it is, like a lot of inbound generating. And that's what I feel like I'm paying for, right? Like I want those inbound generated leads. That's what I'm paying for. But then a lot of people start complaining because they're like, wait a second, some of these leads aren't coming from those sources. I feel like these are lower quality, like somebody's buying cold calling leads or follow-up leads, right? And I've seen a provider do that where they're just following up on old leads in their system and then sending them through as new. And it's like, that's not really what somebody paid for. I want a brand new inbound lead. So like, so not just that, but is that a commonplace thing where people are looking at outbound stuff and bringing it into PPL?
That's just a company ethics, no matter what business.
Is that not? That's what I feel. I feel like it's bullshit, right? Like, bro, I'm paying for inbound. If I wanted cold call leads, like I know cold call providers.
It's like if I bring you out a cauliflower steak, and I'm like, oh, this is a fresh ribeye from Aldi's, just cooked it with grass-fed butter. Here you go. And it's like, dude, this is like cauliflower or mushroom.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think at a high level, like a lot of companies will sell themselves as doing purely SEO or something like that. But like a lot of that's going to be baloney. If someone in the PPL space says they're doing SEO leads, except for us at this point, like I would not trust. I truly would say I would not trust anything they say because I know everything about the SEO space in the real estate investor space. I know who's generating leads. I know who's not generating leads. There's only 2 companies that have SEO leads. We're one of them. We generate half the leads in the space. The other company generates a lot of leads as well. No other company is doing it. And so that's the first trigger red flag for me. On the second thing too, I mean, for us, we only do inbound. We don't do any outbound. If you somehow get an outbound lead, you should definitely let us know. It's probably an inbound lead and the caller just got confused, but if there's something like that, definitely let us know. I'm not a fan of the outbound leads more than anybody. I mean, the thing we try to focus on is we want to avoid the conversation of, well, what's my house worth? That kind of stuff. What's it worth to you? That kind of thing. We try to avoid that at all costs, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I forget whose lead it was. It was way back when I had that one guy calling. He goes, well, what do you want to offer? And it was a PPL lead, and it was supposed to be inbound. I go, no, that's not how this works, bro. I was like, you filled out the form to see if we could make an offer on your property. Exactly. I don't even know if I want to buy it. And I loved having that ability, and that's why I want inbound, right? I want the inbound because I like the power of saying, how may I help you, and not deal. I came from that space in cold calling. Well, what do you want to offer? You called me. And like the last thing I want to do is pay $300 a lead on a PPL for that type of combativeness with a seller. For sure. When you do PPL and inbound, it's different. I just guess I don't understand why. I don't understand why people are lying in the industry, why they're buying leads. I mean, I don't understand why they're not
money. Are you looking for something more complicated than that?
But it's an ethics thing. If they're saying they're generating, then just tell me that, and then don't charge me full rate for it. Like, just
but then they can't charge you full rate for it. So I'm talking.
But to think that they're going to get away, I mean, as soon as I caught the one company doing it when I was on the phone with the seller, and for people out there, there are ways for you to figure this out, right? Like, so as part of my script, one of my standard things that I slip in there is I talk about them, where they came from. Like, oh, okay, you must have been on our website and you filled out that form, or how'd you find us today? And they'll let me know, like, whether it's an email reach or whether it's I saw you on Facebook or YouTube or something, right? And then I say, oh, and you I'm sure you've probably been filling out a lot of forms, huh? So I'm trying to decide like how many forms they filled out. Did they go to one site? How many? And it's just part of figuring out what my competition is. And then like they'll usually answer. And if they say there's a lot of forms or, oh, I only filled out one form. And then later on, when I'm asking about what about using a realtor, who else are you talking to? Like how much time did you make a decision? And they say, well, yeah, I'm talking to like 3 other people. And I say, well, I thought you said you only filled out one form. And then they go, well, I did, but 3 people called me right there, you know. And that's just part of like what I do is I'm on the phone with them just trying to figure out who my legitimate providers are. Because if it happens once, maybe. But like if it happens multiple times, you know you probably have a problem with ethics with that provider. And that's just my record. That's just how I do it. And that's how I found a bunch of them. And that's kind of how I landed on property leads because I was like, I haven't had a problem with property leads yet.
It's good to hear. If you run into a problem, let me know.
Oh, I will.
All right, I wanna switch to talking about FTC consent because if you are a regular listener to the podcast, I don't know how many episodes ago I brought up this news that the FTC changed their guidelines on what consent is and how and if you can sell consent. And the general census that we had on the podcast was I don't know how PPL is going to survive this because what they're basically saying is that when you fill out a form. You can no longer on that form say that I'm going to sell or give your information to somebody else. You can only like the end person can only agree to communicate with that person on that form. So I'm curious, Andy, how do you feel about that law, and how do you feel PPL or specifically property leads is going to survive that regulation?
For sure, PPL going down.
No, PPL is not going down. Well, maybe some companies are. I'm super excited about the change. I mean, for us, it's going to be amazing because it's going to force people to. If people say they're selling leads exclusively, it's going to force people to actually sell them exclusively. And I think a lot of companies today make their money not selling leads as legitimately as they might be marketing. And I think a lot of companies today also make their money buying leads from other companies where they don't know where they got them from and then selling those leads. So in that way, it's going to clean up the industry because you have to have that direct line. So for example, like if John fills out the form and he gets to the end of the form, it needs to say Carlos Zamora is the lead buyer at the end of the form. And so it's going to become a lot more transparent on that side, which I think is really good because you have the direct connection to the homeowner. You know who's going to be getting the lead. It just smells better, you know. On the flip side, if you're selling leads non-exclusively, which we don't do, but if a company were to sell leads non-exclusively, you have to specifically opt in to every single person every single lead buyer. So if on the thank you page or whatever it might be, you have to say, okay, I want to talk to Carlos, I want to talk to Papa P, and I want to talk to John. And then when you select all 3, then you can sell the leads 3 times, or as many times as you want. But you can't generate it once, say you're selling it to Carlos, and then sell it to 5 other guys too. If you do that, the PPL company's on the hook, and all the lead buyers can be on the hook too. So it's a risk for a ton of people. And I think what we'll see is if the aggregators in the space continue to do that, there's going to be some very, very ugly FTC fines coming out.
Yeah, clean it up.
But how are they? I don't get it though. Like, how the hell are they going to know? Let's be honest, because let's just say in general, I don't know what your marketing pages look like, but let's just say it's like, sell my house fast, or like, hey, I'm buying your house.com, and they go to that. That's their paid. How do they know that Brandon from Offer Please? Like, how do they know that it's me? Versus, like, a lot of people don't even remember us from one call to the next. That
the problem is not the sellers. The problem is there are attorney sharks out there that go and pretend to be sellers purely for the sense of tracking consent and then taking those people to court.
So
your problem is not the seller.
That's what I was thinking. Like, the little old lady down the street isn't going to know that, like, she opted into Brandon, and then all of a sudden, like, John called.
I mean, she could report. Like, they could report if they knew the law got passed. That might occur. Andy,
I feel like
the little old lady across the street wasn't filling out a form, and then had her MetaMask and crypto wallet up, and was like, "Oh, what is this guy coming around doing?"
Yeah, I feel like this is an issue they're trying to solve that sellers didn't really give a shit about because they actually requested to be reached out to, and like I just feel like this is
I don't
Yeah.
know, man. Like consent is a big thing, and
But
and maybe it's mostly coming from cell phone carriers. I don't know. I mean, I think there is some consumer impact there, and they're complaining about it enough for people that do have the power to go, find and change and implement laws. What's your
So
opinion?
what
David?
happens if I got a lead and Andy, you send me a lead and I get the lead and I'm like, man, like this is not in my area, whatever, like my area of expertise. And I go and I decide to partner with Carlos. And I'm like, Carlos, call this lead, dude. I can't handle this one. Does that open me up then? Like, is that like me technically, like Carlos isn't opted in?
Yeah,
Two different companies.
That's A2P 10 DLC. That you definitely just broke A2P 10 DLC. If you gave Carlos the phone number and he texted, you broke that. But the FTC law is specifically about selling leads. So lead aggregators, PPL. Two separate things.
But it's not going to affect you, right? The people it's going to affect is going to be like us, where if we were to sell leads multiple times, we could get in big trouble. Another example is like, let's say you refunded us a lead and we wanted to like reprocess it. A ton of PPL companies do that.
Yes, they do. Yeah, they do.
We don't do that, but after January 1st, you definitely can't do that because you're breaking the line of consent again. So
then, how are these marketplaces still in business then? The lead marketplaces. And
January 1st hasn't come around yet.
Oh, so not this. Oh, so not okay. I thought we were okay. I'm with you. This January 2025. But I thought you meant it already happened and you've already been working on this. I didn't know we were talking 6 months down. So you think? I'm just going to extrapolate here. You think that the marketplaces are going out of business?
Yeah, I would say the marketplaces are going out of business. I would say the chance for fines increases substantially, and I think we're going to see a cleanup of the lead quality industry for some of the other companies, or they're just going to start eating the fines. We'll see. But
I mean, I don't want to eat fines.
It's a tricky space though because we're so small. Like the real estate investor space, it feels so big because we're in it, but it's tiny compared to the agent space, compared to mortgage, compared to life insurance, etc. And so
but we're loud.
Going wild. We're loud, but when the FTC starts going wild, there's not many big companies in the space. Like
no,
there's not.
Yeah, and that's the problem with wholesaling, right? Like we're big for us, but not big for the FTC to come after you and be like, I need to dig into your pockets. They're digging into like $1 million, maybe a $10 million a year company, and they want to go after the much bigger fish than that.
Yeah,
I don't know. I just think that's. Go ahead.
I think it'll be a game of who's the first company in the space to get hit with a fine. That's my guess.
When you say company, you mean your industry companies, not wholesaling companies, or do you mean either or?
PPL companies. I don't think wholesaler companies will get hit. And if it is, it's going to be a large company like a New Western or something. It's not going to be a small guy. Small guy. Small guy could be $10 million a year.
I'm not at $10 million a year, and I still worry about it. I mean, I've made it through. I was sued one time, way back in the day for cold calling someone on the do not call list, but yeah, that was it. But I've made it my entire career without having to deal with that. We settled on that. But God, and then because that's aggravating, right? So I try to do things the right way. I'm buying inbound leads. I'm doing it. I'm not calling. I'm not texting. I'm not RVMing. And now they make this new law that potentially, once again, puts me in this crosshair if I buy leads from a provider that is aggregating, and I don't even know that, and that could put me on the hook.
Yeah.
That really makes you have to vet who you're buying the leads from.
Yeah.
100%.
It definitely does. It's something everybody needs to be aware of. And I mean, you're not in the FTC world, you're not going to be targeted, Brandon. You're not off the hook in the A2P 10 DLC consent world. And that is where there are individual attorney sharks going out there, just like they do for like, you're using this person's image on your website, pay this amount of money or we're sending you to court. Like they're going out and they're putting in information and they're seeing if they say no to text messages, if people still send text messages and they're taking them to court. So watch out for that.
So do you guys do, there's a little side note here, I was just thinking, so do you guys on your site do opt-in for texting? So like when somebody, if I buy a PPL, a property leads PPL lead, are you having them opt in for texting as well?
Yeah.
So, and what does that mean just for someone who has no idea? Because I don't have any idea. when you do that, the laws then, yeah, I know, I reiterated that. The laws then say that I could cold text you, right? So if I only wanted to use like I don't know, one of those automated, like I'm thinking a launch control style type of thing. You go to my follow-up sequence and I just mass text you along with all the other leads I bought over this past month. The opt-in covers me for that?
Yeah. I wouldn't generally recommend doing that, but yeah.
No. I definitely would pick up the phone. I generally like to do a text then a call. Like I'll do, and if anyone watched last week's episode or we're doing like a little series on setting up follow-up inside InvestorFuse, doing follow-up text and email campaigns on property leads or PPL leads inside the InvestorFuse CRM, so we could see how to set it up as a solopreneur for minimum work, minimum effort, but not to lose track of your leads. But like texting's the first thing. But if they don't pick up, Andy, I need to know that I could text them without legalities of once again, getting spammed. And because smartphone is so strict too, on me getting my campaigns approved, that if someone spams me and I lose my whole campaign, that's a pain in the butt to get my stuff approved again.
Totally. I wouldn't be too concerned about that, but I generally would recommend text blasting in any form, or cold leads. Just I don't.
So you're not a fan of cold calling. You're not a fan of SMS.
Nope.
Yeah. Were you ever a fan, dare I ask, of RVMs?
No. And
So you weren't a fan.
I've tested everything under the sun. I just know what works and what doesn't work on the lead.
I loved RVMs, bro. I crushed RVMs back in the day. I loved them.
It's a volume play.
It is. It was, and it's not the same now. I mean, I don't do them anymore. But back in the day, it was the Wild West with RVMs. What about direct mail? Are you a fan of direct mail?
Well, so here's a question: what do you think direct mail is inbound?
We've talked about this in this podcast.
That's the debate.
The gray question, the gray area.
I always marked it as an outbound campaign.
Okay.
Like in my opinion, because RVM's 100% outbound. It's 100% outbound.
It's no different than direct mail.
Well, that's why I said I thought direct mail was outbound.
Yeah, but you're like it's a maybe. It's probably outbound.
Yeah. But with RVM, I didn't flinch. Yeah, I didn't flinch. No, I guess that's because I think, if you're asking me honestly, I feel like I know RVM's intrusive. It's your phone I'm calling. Whereas with direct mail, it's like, no,
it's more of a societally expected that you're going to get some
you're culturally conditioned that people can just send mail to your personal residence. It's still
without any issue, because you're so used to throwing out the mailer from Walmart that it doesn't even faze you anymore.
You'll still get the angry guy who's like, stop sending me mail. My house is not for sale. Yeah. But you get more angry people responding to an RVM and a cold text than you would maybe to sending out direct mail. And there's definitely different ways to do direct mail now to get better responses than what people used to do.
We've had some guests
which was just blanket an area or blanket a list. But yeah.
Do you think, Andy, to throw it back at you, do you think it's inbound or outbound?
Yeah, I would treat direct mail as inbound if you filter if you filter the phone calls enough. But anything regarding to texting, so if you send a text message out and you try to drive them to a landing page and then you took that lead in, I would call that outbound lead generation, not inbound. Even though they went to a site and filled out the form, I would still call that outbound.
So we don't do the only way to do compliant outbound texting.
Yeah. And then same thing for RVMs. If it's an RVM, you're driving them to call you back because they responded to your RVM, but still, to me, that's still outbound.
I definitely say it's.
Yeah.
But
direct mail is not as intrusive to me as Facebook.
I would agree with that, but direct mail is when they call back, it's still, when they come off of a PPL lead, it's so different when I call them, because generally I am calling them. Direct mail, they're calling me, so it's a little bit of a reverse. But when I call them, the attitude is completely different. They're expecting my call most of the time. They understand they fill this form out. They're happy.
You're saying the PPL leads
PPL
is different even than to direct mail.
But direct mail, and so they're happy. Where I was going with it is direct mail, they're still like, what's your offer? They're still like, well, you mailed me. You said you wanted to buy my house. You said you buy houses in this area. Or you said you like my neighborhood or whatever it is, right? So I still feel more, not as much combativeness as like an RVM or an SMS or cold call, but definitely more, I would say like inbound PPL, YouTube, like those, I have no combativeness at all. They're always
My immediate reaction is on the creative. Like I hear you on the direct mail piece where it's like, oh, we're buying houses in your area. We bought 3 houses down the street, kind of thing. All of a sudden, you're getting a more Luke cold lead. So if you change the creative on that, you can get a higher quality lead.
What are you thinking?
Contract.
What are you thinking?
Yeah, I got a lot of thoughts on that one. I mean, it's it's a good example on the proper inbound side would be like if you say sell my house for cash, or sorry, if you say like we buy houses fair all cash offer, that creative versus instant cash offer. You say instant cash offer, the title transfer rate of those leads is significantly lower. And so like if we're looking at the same problem in the direct mail space, you have the same thing where you're saying I bought 3 houses over here versus hey, we buy houses for cash. If you're going through a divorce, let me know. That delta in creative, like it's going to cost you a lot more to get a deal from the second creative than the first creative, but the lead quality is a lot higher. And to me, that lead quality could be appeasable for PPL. We don't do direct mail, but if we did,
no, I don't either. I used to. Everything's changed. So when I say I used to, it's just a different time. Like my goals now are not my goals back then when it comes to wholesaling. But let me ask you something. Going back to this FTC compliance and reselling leads in your business in the marketplace and stuff, do you ever see a market or would property leads like your company? You guys cater to what I would say is more original, high-end type of leads, right? Like high quality, I should say. Do you think that there's a market or a place for lower end leads, maybe? Because you made reference numerous times to people not being good. Your sales process, the salesman, the experience, my ability to close a lien or anything like that, right? And so as a newbie, do you think there's a market where that lead could go back out and property leads, as an example, would say, and you'd be very transparent and say something like, hey, we have these regurgitated leads, whatever, these
refurbished.
Yeah, there you go. Refurbished leads at $10 or something really cheap, right? And the person who had them maybe could get reimbursed for that, maybe a couple bucks back into their pocket. I'm making numbers up now. Is there a place for that, or does FTC totally wipe the ability for somebody to do that on leads after they've talked to them, after they've run through the follow-up and all that? Can anyone do that? Is that something that could become something in the industry with these people coming into PPL?
I would never. We've considered doing like you could sell your lead back, and we could like sell it to like an agent company, for example. What we found though is that people are incredibly lazy, high level, and so people will, instead of trying to just refer the lead to an agent in their local market, way more than if they sell us the lead back for $3. They'll offer the $3 method. And I don't think it's in the investor's best interest to do that. I think it's in their best interest to have an agent on their team or in they work with, because they're going to lose a ton more. They're just going to lose a ton more revenue. And then at the end of the day, we end up cannibalizing our own revenue, which doesn't make any sense. So we'll probably never do that. On the lower price lead side, I think there's definitely a market for that. And today, we generate thousands of lower quality leads that we don't send out, that we have to send out to like pay-per-close type companies, like where insert real estate agent network or whatever. We've been trying to figure out what to do with those effectively, but we've never had enough to be like, okay, we should go start something up. We just try to get rid of them as fast as possible type thing.
So
how does
you do?
Go ahead,
Carlos.
No, I have a different top. I have a different.
I was just going to say, like, but you didn't really answer my question. Does the compliance thing not play into it then? So, like,
we wouldn't be able to do it.
So you wouldn't. Because now I'm going off. So you just said that they should have a realtor in their pocket, essentially. Does that almost take away that whole market of what to do with our leads?
You can still be compliant in that scenario, but it's not as easy as it used to be. And at scale, it's even harder. At the scale that Andy's talking about for property
For a
leads, it's very
business.
difficult.
For a
But for
business.
business, you could do it. You would have to send them to that realtor's landing page, and then they must consent to receive communication from
But
that.
that's not how it's done. But I get that. I understand the way, but you have to understand like the marketplace that we're in for these leads.
You technically
and John,
could
you
do
had
an
it.
introduce in text. You could do an introduce in text, and then they have to respond back that they would agree to communicate with that person. That's consent too.
So you need a warm handoff text message, basically, what we would call a warm handoff in like the cold call, where we would be able to like, hey, John, meet Mary, meet John. Okay, you got wow, because that's not how it's done, because you set it up in my back in the day pre-investor fuse. I had Podio, and like John was helping me out, like setting all my flows up. This was, I don't know, 6 years ago. Anyway, it would just be an automatic email. It's like, hey, this lead is a realtor lead, and it goes off. So none of that so that whole market is pretty much not going to happen anymore compliantly. You need to adjust your business.
It needs to change in how it functions. Now, you can make the argument, is that really going to affect them? It would affect the realtor. And like, if they have to go through A2P 10 DLC compliance, yeah, they should be protecting everybody that they're texting through, because if they send a message to that person reports in the spam, that carrier then comes back to their phone number and says, hey, we're shutting off your campaign because everybody keeps marking you as spam. And they're going to be like, it's all because of those leads that Brandon sent me.
Okay, well, so here's where I was leading to this. So if that's gone, Andy, with all the stuff that's happened recently with realtors, do you see a business for your company in generating and selling realtor leads? If realtors now need leads and somebody buys it, kind of like almost what Zillow does, right? But only a little different, obviously. Do you feel like there's something there? Well, why haven't you touched that market?
Someone could definitely go touch that market. There's definitely an opening in that market and stuff. We're not really in that space. Yeah, for sure, but we're not really in that space. The investor space is big enough as it is to go after for us. So we're not really super interested in that right now.
So you're not generating a bunch of leads that you feel like could fit into that space already?
That's what I was going with it.
Drum up a market.
So we do. We try to filter them out before sending to investors. That's what we try to do. That's our goal. We try to recoup that cost by sending them out to agent networks and stuff. But I would definitely say strongly we're not in the real estate agent PPL space. There's a big difference between just like trying to get rid of leads that like we don't want to send out versus actually entering the space. Trying to choose my words carefully there, but
yeah. So another question, and I have to ask this because Carlos would be upset if I didn't. Have you ever thought of opening, or is there a market for, specifically with all the rage nowadays, a sub-2 lead, creative finance, and like I could buy from Andy only sub-2 creative finance? So I'm just making shit up now, but seller, you know what I mean? All the acronyms you got. And I know, like, have you ever thought about marketing to those? Because we know now there's a huge community and market for people looking just for those leads, where there's somebody in that situation. Is that a possible thing, or is that just, hey, dude, like it's on your own to offer that? I'm not doing it on the company level. It's not possible.
Man, I'd say like 60% of leads right now in general already fit into that bucket. It's pretty hard to like differentiate between those types of leads. You could look at like equity in the home, and you could pre-qualify them on the phone, but at the end of the day, like
marketing
the best real estate
perspective.
investor, at the end of the day, the best real estate investor knows how to do everything. Like they're not so stringent on like I only do sub-2s or I only do novations and stuff like that. That's what we historically.
I was thinking more of like the creative though on your end, like tweaking your creative to try to get those types of people.
You end up with lower quality leads. And the last thing I want to do is start diluting the lead quality.
That was.
And those people are going to come through anyways, because like they're
say
not.
That? Was there somebody from your PR department? Like, this is what you respond to that. That was a very good response.
The producer was just in our ear telling the answer. No, I mean, Andy and property leads, you can see just from this conversation, they're very value decision driven on what they choose to do. They don't want to sacrifice lead costs. It may be challenging to teeter between lower cost of lead versus quality, and they always want to stay on the quality side. I have a couple questions, kind of strategy and perspective of going into marketing costs. Earlier, you said some of the top operations or higher volume companies limit per acquisition rep 4 leads per day and no weekends. How is that, or why is that no weekends, and how did you come across the 4 leads a day? And should that be, how different should that be for other companies, smaller companies?
Well, if you're a solo operator, I mean, if I was a solo operator today, first of all, like I would buy leads on the weekends and I buy leads at night too.
Cool.
Just because lead cost tends to be cheaper and stuff. Because the guys who are buying $100,000 a month worth of leads, they're pausing overnight and stuff. And then on the sales rep side, I mean, and again, like I don't run a wholesaling shop. This is not my forte. This is just like secondhand information from them to me, and then now being passed on and stuff. But generally, when you do more than 4 leads a day, it tends to stack too quickly. Then you start to lose people in the pipeline and stuff. And people like the automated follow-up sequences are amazing and they do really, really well, but there is a manual touch that's component that's required. So that's piece number one. And then piece number two is that you don't have sales reps that work 24/7, and they if you look at a consistency basis, typically they don't work on weekends as much, or they want to work on their current leads that they get on the weekends, and so they tend to only buy leads 4 to 5 days a week generally.
Cool. How should someone calculate net lead cost of working with property leads versus a managed PPC? Because some people will say, oh, my cost per lead is cheaper working with this PPC company.
On the managed PPC stuff, I mean, like you have to definitely account for the cost of the management fee, which can range from $1,000 to $3,000 right now,
or more than that for higher operations. I've heard $8,000 recently.
That's management fee of the marketing company that's going to run your PPC. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. Not including ad spend.
No, that's pretty wild to me because that's like a full-time person at that point. But
I'll take that job, bro. Like I'll quit. Yeah. Let me come over for that guaranteed money.
Yeah. And then the other thing you have to account for is the net cost of refunds and stuff too. When you run PPC, if your raw lead cost is like $200, let's say, you add in a 25% net refund rate of vacant land, mobile home, MLS, wholesaler, et cetera, you still end up at like a $250 per lead cost and stuff. But I wouldn't even think about it like that when I'm first starting. Like I would just take whatever my PPC raw lead cost is, and I would just plug that into property leads, and then just see what my eventual ROAS is and stuff. I'd rather you shoot low, get less leads, and find out what a good ROAS is than shoot way too high and then burn out and say this company sucks. Because we don't suck, but we need to give you enough time and a low enough ROAS or a low enough cost to get a good ROAS to be able to adjust from there. If that makes sense.
ROAS means return on ad spend for those of you who are like, what was Andy just saying? And it takes time. That's something that we talk a lot about in this podcast. Everybody coming in looks to the Instagram influencers and like, it doesn't take me no time to be in my Lamborghini. And so, it's great that, what was I going on? I just got distracted by the chat. Oh yeah. You're giving the right expectations for people that they need to focus on time, doing it consistently, following up with the leads consistently, and all that fun stuff. So,
Carlos, I want to chime in real quick.
Please.
So you were talking about sales guys and all that. Would you, and we were talking about like working weekends, all that. Would you recommend, so if I'm that guy willing to work weekends, do all this stuff, and I got my leads on overnight, I'm on the weekends, and you talked about stacking, would you recommend this for somebody who doesn't have a CRM yet?
Yes, you mean, or Carlos?
Yeah, no, I'm asking. I was piggybacking off of Carlos's thing and going into you.
Okay.
Would you recommend PPL to somebody who's newer, good sales experience, but they don't have a CRM? They're putting all their money into generating the leads. Maybe they're using G Sheet at this point. Would you recommend that?
I think for the first 30 leads, you can get away with a Google Sheet and stuff. But I think, just historically, like people who don't have CRMs tend to not be successful, for better or for worse.
Right. That's what I was thinking.
The producer just had me say to clip that scene there that you need a CRM after. More people are successful with CRMs.
Well, it's true. I mean, sorry. We look at our churn rate. We'll look at who are the people that are leaving. We'll see if they said that they use a CRM or not and stuff like that. And if they don't use a CRM, I mean, the chance of them leaving, I don't have the exact statistics, but the chance of them leaving is significantly higher than if they do have a CRM. So. And people tend to leave not because of high level. When we look at the churn rate, people generally are leaving because they are leaving the
money.
industry and they're not successful and they don't have any money, not because
it's money.
of lead quality. Yeah.
I would say it's because of money, and this is my thing is your numbers. I get it, but they don't make sense to me because it's like 30 leads. Let's just say $3,000, $9,000. If you're spending $3,000 a month, you need to come with 3 to 4 months worth of money, in my opinion. Because if you come with just enough for 30 leads, what happens when you run out and that deal doesn't close? You're literally sitting for 2 months waiting for that deal because everyone assumes I get my lead, it closes at the end of the month. And that's a perfect scenario. Remember, when you're closing 1 out of 10 or 1 out of 50, whatever it is, you don't know whether it's the first one you get or the 15th one that you get, which comes in on day 11 of your marketing. And then by that point, you're running out of money in 7-10 days. And then in that point, you're out of money and you're sitting there waiting for 2 months for that deal to close. So you need about 3 months, 4 months. And by that point, people are probably just talking shit and saying, nah, man, PPL is horrible. I'm not making my money. But really, they just ran out of cash because they didn't come capitalized.
1,000%. And to piggyback off that too, something that absolutely boils my blood at this point is people are like, oh yeah, the cash conversion cycle on PPC is 45 days. I get all my money back and I'm good. That could not be further from the truth. We spend millions on PPC. I know how much the leads, I know what the title transfer looks like, and I know, when titles transferred and stuff like that. And the cash conversion cycle is not 45 days. You are very lucky if your cash conversion cycle is 45 days. The reason why we market at 3 months and at 6 months is because that's when the cool things start to happen. Nothing cool happens after a month, and not that much is cool happening after 2 months. It's around that 3 month mark when it really starts to get pretty. I see a ton of SaaS companies saying, "Oh yeah, just do PPC. Cash conversion cycle is great," or this, that, and the other. But it's no. I fundamentally disagree with that. I hope you guys weren't pitching that or anything, but I have a ton of data on that. About that one.
This is a realistic.
That data would be interesting.
Was.
That for another episode. I mean, that'd be just something that'd be interesting data because nobody that we talked to is doing the title transfer data stuff, at least thus far. That's super interesting data to dive into.
It's interesting too, looking at kind of per channel basis, because some channels are better in terms of cash conversion cycle than others. PPC and SEO are definitely better. SEO is actually a little bit worse than PPC. PPC is a little bit more high intent because they're looking for it today. They don't even care about the organic stuff. SEO, they're actually, my high level opinion based on my experience doing wholesaling and also based on the data we've seen, it's a combination of anecdotal and data here, is that they're a little more interested in working with the right person rather than any person, if that makes sense. And so there's a little bit more skepticism there. But what we've also seen is that the cash produced by SEO leads tends to be a lot higher than PPC leads because they are less likely to reach out to 3, 4, 5, 10 companies. They'll reach out to just 1 to 2 to 3. And then the more interrupt channels, you tend to add another 45 days on the cash conversion cycle which is what typically is PPC. So there's a ton of stuff there. But
the other thing too, just to piggyback off that, is it's not just everyone think what you're talking about is on the initial. They're talking to 3 other people. They won't be if it's this. The other thing to think of is if you make it through that initial period, they don't say yes, your follow-up, once you're following up enough times, and let's just say they're not ready for 5 months, 6 months, 7 months, if you're the guy hanging along, following up, when 7 months comes along, they're not going back out to refill out forms. You've now built a level of trust with them. And that's it. That's like SEO, right? Because SEO is trust on the web. Follow-up is trust on the phone. And it's if you do that, they're not going to call somebody come month 7, month 8. They're going to just go with you. So that's why I think follow-up is one of the most important things, even when you're getting these high-quality leads, because a certain percentage will only close on that first week or so. Most of them come a lot longer than that.
Yep.
100%.
Love it. Well, is there anything you want to end with here, Andy? Super appreciate your time here. It's great talking to you. You align with the podcasted values on the realistic expectations that we give to our
right. Kind of hits on all of our bases too, like SaaS, wholesaler, everything, marketer, everything.
Carlos, I was going to say, Carlos, did you have any more questions? I thought Carlos had a list of questions. Were you good?
That's right.
No, just those couple. I mean, definitely appreciate Andy hopping on. Giving our community great service from everything that we hear of really happy property leads customers. Want to make sure John put up a QR code Want to make sure people have the best way of learning more about property leads, what signing up looks like, maybe like what onboarding options look like as well.
Yeah, for sure. If you guys just fill out the step 1 form, that quick little form there, you can either, after that, you can either choose to self-onboard yourself if you know exactly what to do, you bought PPL leads before and stuff like that, you can self-onboard. Or if you want to talk to somebody on the phone and get more intricate details, you can do that too. You can set the call for tomorrow, or really any day of the week. And yeah, I mean, we're super flexible. And if, our biggest metric that we focus on is not necessarily the money that we make, but more the churn that we have. So we try not to lose anybody if they're a good investor and they have a good sales process and stuff. So if you feel like that's you and you feel like you have an opportunity to make some money, I would definitely encourage you to sign up and give it a shot. And if it doesn't work out along the way, reach out.
I would too. I ditto that.
Thank you, man.
So, John, post that last comment from Cecil. I'll answer that real quick before we hop off, just so people know before they're signing up. So Cecil asked about budgets. We kind of got into the thick of it, but we kind of talked about just spending. So I've made the mistake with PPL of starting out with a lower budget because I was testing, and so everything I said I encountered, right? Like, if you don't apply a big enough budget, you will run out of money. Andy's a good guy, but listen, he wants to spend your budget. And I only say that because I know, because he spends my budget. It's like, but he gives you the ability to raise your monthly budget in the system and it'll cap out. But the second I raise, it's funny, the second I raise my budget, all of a sudden I'm getting, I just keep getting leads. I'm like, I always joke, I'm like, this dude wants to spend my money. And that's kind of like how he's set up. But I would say, so we started out pretty small. I think I budgeted my first month with them. I was like, man, I'm only going to spend like $3,000 or so. And we started getting some good deals, some good leads, some good contracts. And I started going up. And so we kind of settled in around like 9K. But I will say this month, I'm pretty sure we've already hit like 8K, and I'm not done with the month yet because I upped my budget. I'm not sure yet. I'd have to look at that again, but I know we're going a lot higher than where we were before. So my goal was to try to hit to 10K and just kind of go from there. But I was also playing around with my markets, my bidding. There's a lot of stuff with PPL that you could play with the markets and the bidding to see what you get. So the budget doesn't apply as much as I think you should learn what's good for your markets and your bids across those county markets. Like, he also gave options of nighttime and weekends, which could lower your budget, but give you the same amount, if not more leads, I guess. Going nationwide, Andy mentioned as well, those cheaper leads, but maybe it's more rural. So again, I would say you just play with them to get your contracts, but we're adjusting as we go. But I think we were around 9K the last time, and then I think we're already hitting like that 7-8K this month is kind of where we're aiming towards, and I hope to go higher.
For sure. And the three categories of people that we see with PPL, just to give a highlight recap there, is one, we have people who are going, national or statewide. Their lead cost is in that $50, $75 area, typically, unless it's like Florida or something. Then you have the person who they don't want to deal with any rural stuff. They're not a fan of like novations or something, but they want to buy leads over wide geography. So they'll buy like the top 700 counties. They'll bid the lowest amount possible. They're not going to bid up any higher than they have to. And because of that, the leads will fall where they may. They will get a ton of lead flow just because they're buying such a wide geography, even if it's at the lowest price. And then the third person, typically someone who's like a backyard investor, they absolutely crush it. And they're like, 5 to 15 counties. They could spend a ton more on leads. And so they tend to, rip away the competition in terms of lead volume and stuff. But they don't want to touch anything outside their market and stuff. So if you're outside one of those three, buckets, definitely let me know. I'd be very curious to see what you do. Those are typically what we see.
I think that's good. And you just play around with it. I mean, I would definitely do the onboarding call. I did that. I would definitely do that and get your stuff set up. And they were great communicating as I was figuring it out compared to the other systems. And then once you do, I don't talk to them anymore. Everything's done through their website. No offense, Andy, but I don't need to talk to your team anymore. It's pretty much straightforward. Between the refunds, my setting my bid, my monthly budgets, adding markets. A lot of the other providers, you have to email them to add markets, and which was always a pain in the butt because I didn't know what I wanted at the time. With this one, it's just like boom, 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 add it, and I can adjust as I go. The other thing we didn't mention, and I know we're logging off here, but real quick, is you could pause it whenever you want to. We didn't touch on that, but like if you're going away on a vacay, like I was up at the parks, and I had to go do stuff, and I was out in the field, and I couldn't, like at my mobile home parks, I can't just like pick up a phone and call somebody and do a sale. So I just paused my campaign, and they let you do that as well, which then affects your budget because now you're not spending as much, or else you got to eat it. You got to try to push it through later on in the month to get the right spend.
Which it should be said, if you did that with your PPC campaign, that's not good.
Yeah, bro. Yeah, right. You can't do that, right?
I mean, you could, but like especially if it's still learning and trying to give you the best leads, then you're gonna break all of that kind of learning and stuff.
Yeah,
so.
You can't do that PPC.
Yeah.
So I got one question before we log off. Why do you think people talk so much shit on PPL?
I think two things. I think one, there's been some unscrupulous companies in the past that have caused a lot of heartache, and for a long time there were really only like 2 companies in the space, and then slowly there became a lot more. And so I think that definitely affected people's heart and soul when it came to PPL. And I think also, and this is naturally, it's not as transparent as if you do your own marketing, right? Like if you go do Google PPC, you know where the lead came from. You don't know where the lead came from with us. And I don't think it matters, because at the end of the day, like all that's going to do is affect your mind space and what you think the lead quality should be. It doesn't actually reflect on what the lead quality actually is. But I think that can cause issues with people. But I think like doing stuff like this, where we talk about the back end, title transfer, and like where we do marketing, what we think is inbound and outbound and stuff like that. I hope that helps, kind of right the ship and see that, hey, I'm a real human too. I actually give a shit about if you're successful or not. And then I think the soft guarantee we have about, if you get a bunch of leads and they suck, I really don't want you to leave. And I really want to make it right for you, and see you get through to the other side and stuff. So I think there's a lot of back history there to why it sucks, but I hope that we can do our part to change it and stuff.
I don't know, dude. I don't know. I felt like that was a very PR. I'll take it because you say, what you said is what you said, but I was expecting you to just say that's because they suck at sales.
Interesting. Well, I think.
I mean, if your leads are good and they're complaining that they're trash, but they're good, and they're complaining that it's a waste of money and just go do it yourself, wouldn't the only logical thing is, well, bro, you just can't close them? Your sales process sucks?
Yeah, I think maybe the spicy answer you're looking for is, we have a lot of people who come in and they'll complain, hey, the lead prices are too high. I'm getting outbid. And all that says to me is that you suck at sales, because there's somebody else in your market who's been able to sustain that price point for a longer period of time than you. Maybe you don't suck at sales, maybe you just suck at real estate, but you suck at one of the two. I think that's typically like the eye-opening piece that happens. And I'm not trying to just be a dick. Like,
no, I mean,
it's trying to be real.
What people want to hear, though.
It's also easier to complain with the price point, right? Like when somebody was going out before PPL existed and they're like, I want motivated leads. It's either I got to go the long road of SEO and put in the time, or I need to go to a PPC campaign. I'm going to hire somebody. And that person, before they were hired, be like, you need to give me $15K and I'll get you results. And so they weren't even bringing on the people. So now you've got people coming to PPL, be like, I got $1,000 today. Let's go see what I can do. And then they can't do anything because they don't have the money to go the full distance that you need to go. And then what do? They complain. So I think that's a problem too.
The other thing I've noticed is I took some polls. I'm not going to name names, but I noticed the people that said that a lot, that were telling me not to do PPL back when I was looking in October or whenever it was. They also do a lot of things. So I felt like their response, and by a lot of things, I felt like their response was based on sales process, because by a lot of things, they're doing, flipping. They got pad splits going on. They got some Airbnbs. They're guruing it up, making content. And generally, like if you're absent from your business on these types of leads, so a lot of their complaint was they're too expensive. The ROI is too low. Like it's only 2x. Like I need better on my money. They're all gambling. People don't pick up the phone. And granted, you're going to have that in anything. But I felt like one commonality is like, doesn't look like you're really just focused on wholesale leads. Looks like you're doing a lot of stuff, and maybe your process is broken.
We've seen gurus who are very popular in the industry come through and buy leads. and then we get to see the back end of their sales process. And there's been many times where it's been very, very bad, and then they complain about price. And then what you end up finding is that they've just done a really good job in the past of doing really good marketing arbitrage, where they are in insert special mastermind when they found out that super secret way to do some super secret marketing that nobody right now knows how to do. But the second they figure out how to do it, their business flops again. They got to go figure out the next special marketing thing. And so what you end up finding is that these guys who are, paint themselves as amazing gurus and wholesalers and all that other stuff, they're actually just like sleuths who are really good at marketing in certain aspects. So to me, that's the dirty secret. Now, to be said that we have some gurus who buy a ton of leads, they're spending 50, 60 grand a month, and that's all well and good. But you take the good with the bad, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. I appreciate that. All right.
Sure.
This was awesome. I feel like we gave the people some good stuff. I feel like we got to see behind the scenes. It was unscripted type of responses, so I appreciate that.
Awesome. Well, it was great to be here. Thank you guys for the opportunity. This was awesome.
Appreciate it as well. Everybody have a great weekend. Happy Memorial Day
Lock and load
to the United States.
Thank you for all those who served. Yes.